بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. And welcome back after this long break of 2 weeks approximately, and I hope inshallah that we will have a strong start from today until my next trip, if Allah is willing. If I recall correctly, we stopped at the things forbidden during menstruation. Now, the book lists a number of things. These things are prohibited for a woman in her menses, as it is prohibited as well for a woman in her postnatal bleeding, because they are almost identical in their rulings except for few exceptions. So number one, it is prohibited for a woman in her monthly cycle to have intercourse, and that is penetrative sexual intercourse with her husband. And this was proven through the Qur'an, where Allah Azza wa Jal ordered us not to get close, in the sense that we should not have intercourse with our spouses when they are on their monthly cycle. And also in the authentic hadith that the Prophet ﷺ was asked by his companions that should we get our women out of the house when they have their monthly period, and the Prophet was angered by that, because the companions said to themselves, the Prophet ﷺ always went against the Jews and the Christians in their religious practice, and this is part of our religion, as you know. So they wanted to check about the status of a woman when she has her monthly cycle. So the Prophet was angered by this, alayhi salatu wasalam, and he said, do everything you usually do except you do not have intercourse. And this clearly shows you that it is permissible for a woman to live her normal life in her house with her husband and children, and it has no impact, none whatsoever, on her daily routine. Secondly, it is prohibited for a man to divorce his wife when she has her monthly cycle. And this is taken from the hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, when he divorced his wife due to some issues. And Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, went to the Prophet and told him about what Abdullah had done. So the Prophet told him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to order Abdullah to revoke the marriage or the divorce, reconcile with her, and then wait until she gets her menses, and after she's pure from her menses, he can divorce her. So the scholars all agree that the legitimate divorce must either take place in the woman's status of purity, state of purity, after having her monthly cycle and before intercourse takes place, or while she's pregnant. These are the only two Sunni ways of divorce that are permitted. And this is definitely for the betterment of marriage. See, if I wanted to divorce my wife and we had some sort of problems between us, and I'm really angry, so once I decided to divorce her, Islam tells me wait. I said, I don't want to wait. Islam said, no, you must wait until she gets her menses, and then she's pure from her menses, and then you can divorce her. So I said, okay, if the Islam says so, I have to wait. So I wait like a week or two before she gets her menses, and then another week while she's in her menses. After 3 weeks from that incident where I was angry, 99.9% the anger would have vanished and disappeared. And the moment she's pure from her menses, we go back to our old hanky-panky and we reconcile and we kiss and make up and nothing is wrong. But if I were to divorce her at that moment, I would have regretted it for the rest of my life, and Islam wants to prevent that. Number 3, it is prohibited for a woman to pray. Number 4, it is prohibited for a woman in her monthly cycle, that is, to fast. So praying and fasting is prohibited for a woman on her monthly cycle, because one of the tabi'een came to Mother Aisha and she asked her, why is it that a woman in her menses is ordered to make up her fasts and not to make up her prayers? So Mother Aisha asked her, are you from the Khawarij? Are you a Haruriyah? This is how we used to do at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, meaning that she approved that at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, women did not pray nor fast while they were in the state of menstruation, but they used to make up for the missed days of Ramadan, but not for the missed prayers they had skipped. And why is the difference? First of all, we shouldn't ask for why. Rather, we should say that this is the religion that we submitted our will to, and we should accept it as it is. However, some scholars say that prayers are often repeated 5 times a day. So there is no disconnection with prayers, while fasting happens once a year. So it is easier to make up missed days of Ramadan rather than to make 100 or 200 prayers every month, depending on how many days a woman skips. For example, in a week she skips 35 prayers. In 10 days, some women have, it is 50 prayers. So to do that every single week is, every single month is a lot. So Allah made it easy for them, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Of course, when a woman in her state of menstruation, she is not in her state of purity, which means that things that require purity, she cannot perform. And on the top of that, prayer, as we've mentioned. And number 5 is tawaf. So a woman in her monthly cycle cannot perform tawaf. This does not prevent her from completing her rituals of Hajj. So she can go to Mina, she can go to Arafat, she can go to Muzdalifah, she can come back to Mina and stone the Aqaba, and she can cut her hair, slaughter her sacrifice, and remain 3 days in Mina throwing the 3 jamarat, the small, the medium, and Al-Aqaba on these 3 days. But she cannot perform her tawaf, nor she can pray. And this was clearly stated by the Prophet ﷺ when he went once and saw Aisha crying, and that was when she was in the state of Ihram for going for Hajj, the farewell Hajj. So he said, what's wrong? Did you get your menses? This is something Allah has preordained upon all women who are daughters of Adam. So he instructed her to do everything a pilgrim does, with the exception of performing tawaf. Number 6. This point, number 6, you should put a note in your books, because this is an issue of dispute. And the most authentic opinion is that a woman in her monthly cycle, she's entitled to read, to recite the Qur'an without any problem. What is not permissible is the following point, which is number 7. That is holding the Qur'an. So for a woman to recite the Qur'an out of memory, there's no problem in that, none whatsoever. The vast majority of scholars say no problem. She's reciting it out of memory. To recite it out of reading from the Qur'an without touching it, there's no problem. The problem is in touching the Qur'an. However, if she were to read the Qur'an from a mobile phone or from an iPad or a PDA or a computer, there's no problem, because this doesn't hold the same ruling of the Qur'an in Arabic. And also, if she has a book of Tafsir ibn Kathir, for example, and she reads the text of the Qur'an from this tafsir, there's no problem as well, because she is not holding the actual Qur'an, but rather the book of tafsir, which has more statements and phrases and words of tafsir than the word of Allah itself. So number 8 is also there. It is worth noting that in number 7, that is, holding the Qur'an, in the textbook it says, as God says in reference to the Qur'an, only purified can touch it. Surah 56 verse 79. لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. And we talked about this, and we said that this understanding of the ayah is not true. This statement, this ayah, this part of the ayah, this ayah, it's a verse, is written on most of the old books of the Qur'an, indicating that you should not touch it if you're not in the state of purity, meaning wudu, which is wrong. This ayah is referring to the angels, and the book that it is talking about is the preserved tablet, al-Lawh al-Mahfuz. Therefore, having this is wrong, so I'd appreciate if you scratch it out. But the ruling itself is correct. Holding the Qur'an is correct. You should not do that when you are in the state of menses. Number 8, staying in the mosque. And staying in the mosque for a woman who is in her monthly cycle, or entering the mosque to begin with, is an issue of dispute among scholars, and the most authentic opinion is that this is not permissible. The evidence is that the Prophet ﷺ, in an authentic hadith, was in i'tikaf, in seclusion. So he was in the masjid in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, not leaving it, for the sake of getting closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. So he requested something from Mother Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her. So she said, O Prophet of Allah, I am in my monthly cycle. So the Prophet said, I know. Your menses is not in your hand. Meaning, I want you to hand me something, a towel, a piece of cloth, and by handing it from outside, your hand entering the masjid is okay. You're not entering the masjid with your body. From this hadith, the scholars understood that the Prophet ﷺ approved Mother's Aisha's way of thinking when she thought that it is prohibited for her to enter the masjid. That was correct, and the Prophet approved of that because of her menses. But he did not approve her thinking that even her hand cannot enter the masjid, because what is prohibited is the body and not the hand itself, and hence this is also prohibited. Then we move on to postnatal discharge, which is known as an-nifas in Arabic, and this is the blood that comes out after a woman gives birth. And there are a number of issues not mentioned in the textbook, but this is an extra thing that you have to know. First of all, a pregnant woman, and just before delivery, may see the blood coming out, spottings. Should she stop praying? The answer is no. Isn't this considered to be postnatal bleeding? The answer is no, unless it is accompanied by the labor pains and extractions that indicate she is about to give birth within an hour or two or so. Some ladies get these discharges or spotting a week before delivery. So she should not stop praying until she gets the contractions that indicate that she's due, and maybe the water breaks, etc., but not way before that. Postnatal bleeding is considered postnatal bleeding when a child is born, when a mother gives birth, or when she aborts the pregnancy and the fetus that comes out in the form of a human being with a head, arms, and legs. But if a woman who was pregnant and miscarried, and what came out were pieces of flesh, this is not considered to be postnatal bleeding. She may still pray, fast, and even have intercourse if she wants to. This is known as istihada or damu fasad, a blood that is not normal, but it is not considered to be menses nor postnatal bleeding, and hence does not carry the same rulings. So how would we know that? If a woman miscarriages below 80 days, this is definitely not postnatal bleeding. This blood does not stop her from praying and fasting. And if she miscarriages after 120 days, definitely this is postnatal bleeding, because after 120 days the soul is breathed into the fetus. We have an area between 80 and 120 days. This is an area where we have to look at the fetus that came out. If it has the features of a human being, such as a head, arms, and legs, then this is postnatal bleeding, and she has to refrain from everything that we mentioned earlier. If not, if it was only pieces of flesh, in this case, she can continue and without any problem. What is the minimum period of postnatal bleeding? A woman gives birth. She can bleed for a day, half a day. She may not bleed. This is possible. But there is a maximum. The norm that she bleeds, and the bleeding continues until the 40th day of her birth. If the bleeding continues, she should take ghusl and pray and consider herself in the state of istihada. But what about if the blood stopped on the 15th day of her birth. If the blood stops earlier and she sees her purity, which is either identified by the white thread-like discharge with no other colors accompanying it, or by total dryness. If she sees this, she should take ghusl, pray, fast, and her husband can have intimacy with her, providing that she doesn't see any bleeding until she continues the 40th day. What does that mean? On the 15th day of her birth, she took ghusl and she prayed and fasted for a week. On the 22nd day of her birth, she saw blood. Immediately she should stop and consider herself in the state of the 40 days of postnatal bleeding. This is what the companions used to do. May Allah be pleased with them all. So it cannot exceed 40 days. There is no minimum to it. If it was cut short, you perform ghusl and pray and fast. And if it returns before the 40 days are over, you have to refrain and still consider yourself to be in the state of nifas. And there is 3 pointers that the textbook says a woman in her menses differs with a woman in her postnatal bleeding. Number 1, the menstrual period serves as a time mark. This is correct. The monthly cycle counts as part of the iddah. And we know that the iddah is the waiting period whenever a marriage is dissolved, whether voluntary or through death or through separation. So normally speaking, in the case of divorce, 3 monthly cycles are needed for the first and second divorce to be effective, and they would become strangers afterwards. For a third divorce, 1 monthly cycle is needed. For khul', 1 monthly cycle is needed. For a woman who does not have monthly cycles, either due to menopause or because she's a child, then 3 months of 90 days should be observed. And so on. These are counted by monthly cycles, not by postnatal bleeding. So this difference is true. Number 2, the menstrual period confirms that the woman is not pregnant, and this cannot be, of course, said with postnatal bleeding because she just gave birth. So what's the point? But a monthly cycle proves that a woman is not pregnant, so that she can be divorced, or she can even get married if she had illegitimate sexual relationship before marriage. And number 3, if a woman needs to do some consecutive fasting in compensation for a sin and she has the period, her fasting before and after the period is deemed consecutive. In these cases, of course, I have no idea why they mentioned this, because even if a woman was pregnant and she was doing, let's assume, 2 months consecutive for killing a person. So she was fasting. She fasted her 9th month of pregnancy, never missed a day. And on the day of her giving birth, she gave birth. So the 30 days are gone. Her postnatal bleeding period would act like a monthly cycle. And that would be a legitimate reason to skip fasting until she's pure. Then she must continue the remainings of the 2 months, which is 1 month. So this point is not clear to me, and maybe it is. It needs more explanation, but I have no knowledge in what they meant. Anyhow, These are some of the differences that the jurors had mentioned. Now we move on to the chapter that deals with prayer. And in Arabic, as-salat, even before Islam, the Arabs, before the time of the Prophet ﷺ, understood that as-salat is supplication, is dua. And here we find it problematic when people come to translate and they mix between the two meanings, the linguistic and the technical or legislative definition. So as-salat is to make dua, and the technical and legislative meaning is an act of worship that includes saying specific words as well as doing specific actions, starting with Allahu Akbar and concluding with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So it is an act of worship. Why are you praying? Oh, it's a good exercise. It's not a prayer. Why are you praying? For the sake of Allah. What do you do? Anything. It's not accepted. What do you do? I face the Qibla, I say Allahu Akbar, I bow, I raise from my bowing position, I prostrate twice, I do this, I say that, and then I conclude my form of worship with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Okay, this is salat. So we have a chunk of 3 or 4 paragraphs that are not part of fiqh. You can read that in your spare time, inshallah. And we move to the following section, which is the call of prayer. What is the call of prayer? It's called Adhan. And Al-Adhan has also linguistic meaning and a legislative and technical meaning. So the linguistic meaning is to announce, is to notify. So this is mentioned in Surah At-Tawbah in the very beginning, that Allah Azza wa Jal had notified the idol worshippers of the truce period, etc. You remember this, وَأَذَانٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ, to the end of the ayat. This is a linguistic meaning, which is to notify, to announce. The legislative meaning of adhan is it's an announcement in specific wordings informing people that the prayer is due. So what is the definition of adhan? It is notifying people with specific words that the time of salat is due. And we know the hadith of Abdullah ibn Zayd, may Allah be pleased with him, where he saw a dream when the Muslims were trying to find out a way to call people to the masjid. So when he went home and had this vision where he saw an angel coming to him teaching him the adhan, because he wanted to have a trumpet and he wanted to have, some said, let's use a bell like the Christians, trumpet like the Jews, light fire like the fire worshippers, and the angel taught him how to say the adhan. So when he went to the Prophet ﷺ and told him about his vision, immediately afterwards Umar came and said, by Allah, I saw the same dream, O Prophet of Allah. So the Prophet was happy, and he ordered Abdullah ibn Zayd to teach the adhan to Bilal, because Bilal had a louder and more beautiful voice, and the adhan is what we know it as of today. And there is also something else which is called iqamah, and this is a shorter version of the adhan, done in a much subtle and quicker way to ask the worshippers to stand up for prayer. So this is the actual call for the prayer. The adhan is a notification. The time is due. Women can pray in their homes if they wish. Men should prepare and come to the masjid because soon the prayer would be called for. Now, what is the ruling of adhan and iqamah? Scholars say that adhan is a communal, it's a collective duty. So it's a communal obligation, fardun ala al-kifayah. If one does it, the rest are exempted. And if no one does it, they're all sinful. And when we are in a city like we are today, there are thousands of masjids. So if I missed the salat, should I offer the adhan? The answer is no. Because the whole town has been informed about the adhan through a masjid or more. As for the iqamah, it is highly recommended to be performed, whether by women or by men, while women should not do it if there are men who are non-mahram listening to her. Other than that, she can make it in her home alone when she is with other women and segregated away from non-mahram men. Should women perform adhan? The answer is no. Even if alone, yes, she's not supposed to do that. Adhan and iqamah are part of the rituals of Islam. Whenever the Prophet traveled, alayhi salatu wasalam, on his expeditions, he would come to a village or a town. He would not raid that village or town before Fajr. And he would tell his companions, listen, if you hear an adhan, then they are Muslims. We cannot come and approach them and attack them. But if you don't hear an adhan, this means that they are not Muslims and we can attack them and fight with them because they are enemies of Islam and they have been attacking us as they are around and surrounding Medina. And this is why Ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy on his soul, said that if a village, if a town, if a people refrained from calling the adhan and giving the iqamah, and they instead selected to fight rather than call the adhan and the iqamah, this is an act of apostasy, and the Muslim ummah should fight it or fight them under the flagship of the Muslim imam, the Muslim ruler, because refraining from giving the adhan as commanded is an act of apostasy. We have the conditions. So I think we will go through the conditions in the remaining times. I don't know if we will have enough time to go for the what is said in the adhan. So kindly the administrators send me the emails of the questions so that we can have it ready bi'idhnillah. Conditions of the adhan. Firstly, it must be done by a sane Muslim man. Sanity, Islam, and age of puberty is not a must, but it is it adds value. So if a non-Muslim comes into the masjid and calls the adhan, this is invalid. Why? The adhan is the same, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Yes, but it's a form of worship. Therefore, it has to be done by a Muslim. And likewise, what we see in some countries, that they do not call the adhan on time through a person, rather they bring a recording, and they play the recorder on time. And this is wrong. This is a ibadah. This adhan is invalid. Why not, after 15 minutes, call the iqama as well, record it, and put a tape of Sheikh Shuraim or Sheikh Sudais from the Haram leading the prayer of Maghrib or Isha, and the congregation are praying behind the cassette recorder or the DVD player. Why is that not the case? They said, no, Iqama is calling the people. It doesn't have to be live, but the actual prayer, the actual Imam should be present. It's the same thing. So it has to be done by a sane Muslim man. If a mad man comes, someone who's insane, and calls the adhan, this is not valid. You cannot guarantee that in the middle of the adhan he starts to sing or dance or do something or say something that is inappropriate. If the person giving the adhan is not sane, is drunk, is this or that, again, this is not a valid reason for giving the adhan. The adhan is invalid. But what about if a child gives the adhan? The scholars say that if the child was someone who the word is discernment, who has the ability to distinguish, to know what is happening. He's 9, 10 years of age. Yeah, this is okay. But if a child is like 5 years of age, beautiful voice, he says, Allahu Akbar, and he starts giggling and laughing or going here and there. No, you brought this to yourself, and this is totally not permissible to have. So you have to have someone who's an adult. Number 2, which is a condition, the adhan must be done at the time when the prayer falls due. If it is done earlier, it is invalid. So this is true or almost true with all prayers. If you pray, if you offer the adhan a minute before the time is due, your adhan is invalid because it was done before its time. Maghrib time, sunset time, is at 6. You offer the adhan at 5:58, 2 minutes. The adhan is invalid. Not only that, people would break their fast according to your adhan, and you will be sinful for that. And people would hasten to pray Maghrib immediately after hearing you say Allahu Akbar, and the sun has not set yet. So all of this falls on your head. Now, it's almost true except for 2 prayers. The first prayer is Al-Fajr prayer, because the Sunnah is to have 2 adhans for Fajr. One adhan is about half an hour before the actual break of dawn, which acts as a reminder and not a notification of the prayer time is due. So the Prophet ordered Bilal, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ordered Bilal, may Allah be pleased with him, to call the adhan, the first adhan of Fajr. And he said to the people, O people, Bilal announces the adhan and you can eat and drink. He announces the adhan early so that a person who's asleep gets to wake up and pray witr if he wishes, or eats and drinks his pre-dawn meal, and for the one who's praying to conclude his prayer with witr before the actual adhan of Fajr. Then Ibn Maktoum, the blind man, would call for the Fajr prayer. So these are 2 adhans. And the second prayer is the prayer of Jumu'ah, the Friday prayers, because at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, Friday has had only one adhan. And so was the case at the time of Abu Bakr, at the time of Umar. When Uthman came, may Allah be pleased with him, and he's a rightly guided caliph, he said that Medina has expanded. So by the time the Imam says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and the Muaddin calls the Adhan and he gives the khutbah and the prayer, people would not have enough time to come to pray. So he suggested, he introduced an Adhan similar to Fajr, which is prior to the actual Adhan by an hour or 40 minutes, so that the people would wake up, get ready, and come to the prayer. Isn't this bid'ah, Sheikh? No, it's not bid'ah. It was done by the rightly guided caliph, whom the Prophet said, alayhi salam, follow my sunnah and the sunnah of the rightly guided caliph. So the Prophet ordered us to follow their sunnahs, and not only that, none of the companions had ever objected to it. They all approved and agreed it, so it is okay, inshallah. Okay, also in this second point, when is the iqamah should be called? The iqamah should be called just before starting to pray. So when the Imam gives a signal, or when the Muaddin is in agreement with the Imam that I will call the iqamah at this particular moment, then it should be done. Number 3, one of the conditions of iqamah and adhan is that they should be done in the right order without gaps. So you're not allowed to say Allahu Akbar, and then you go and answer a mobile phone or text someone or talk to someone. They say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu Muhammad. This is not the right way of doing it. You have to do it in sequence. And number 4, they must be done in Arabic and in the specific wording explained in the Sunnah. So someone in Finland, for example, says, Sheikh, we don't know Arabic here, and they're all Finnish people. Finnish people or Finnish? I don't know. Who cares? Danish maybe. And they don't know except this language and English. So is it okay if I called glorify be to Allah, glorify to be Allah, or Allahu Akbar, Allah is the greatest, Allah is the greatest? I said, no, it has to be done in Arabic. But Sheikh, they don't understand Arabic. Tough luck. Qur'an is in Arabic, Adhan is in Arabic, prayer is in Arabic. You have to do that in Arabic. This is how Allah prescribed it. Now, they would like to understand it in their translations, no problem. But you cannot call the Adhan or the Iqamah in any other word but in Arabic. And women, again, we have gone through that. So we will stop here with the qualities the caller to prayer should possess. And that would be, inshallah, on this Thursday, bi'idhnillahi azza wa jal. So the question number 1 from Isra: can I get up during night prayer and make dua and dhikr while menstruating, since I'm excused but I still want to wake up to be the few who worship Allah at night? Will my intention be rewarded? The answer is yes. Because Allah Azza wa Jal told us that the time of Sahar, and this is the last third of the night, just before the break of dawn, وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ, they seek Allah's forgiveness at these times. So yes, you can wake up, you can make dhikr, you can read the Qur'an, you can ask Allah for forgiveness. The general understanding is that it is not only for those who pray. Allah Azza wa Jal descends to the lower heaven when it is the last third of the night, and He says, هل من سائل فأعطيه? Is there anyone asking me so that I can give him? هل من مستغفر فأغفر له? Is there anyone seeking forgiveness so I would forgive him? Is there anyone who is repenting so that I would repent over him? So there's nothing mentioning that this is exclusively for those who pray. You can do that, Sister Isra, without any problem. Faizan says, is there any prayer for thankfulness? Thankfulness or salatu shukri, there is a hadith, but the hadith is not authentic. It was made weak by Sheikh Al-Albani. Therefore, we don't find any traces of a specific 2 rak'ahs in thanking Allah Azza wa Jal. You can offer voluntary prayers, as many as you wish, not for this particular blessing of Allah Azza wa Jal. So Allah blessed you with a baby boy, so you immediately go, Allahu Akbar, I pray 2 rak'ahs. No. But whenever you remember that Allah blessed you with a good job, a good spouse, a good car, so you said, okay, I'm going to pray like 6, 8 rak'ahs, just normal rak'ahs, part of showing my gratitude to Allah. There is no problem in that. The actual authentic sunnah was that whenever a blessing of Allah occurred that is not reoccurring, the Prophet used to prostrate one prostration, and this is called prostration of gratitude. So you have an uncle in ICU, and he undergoes an operation, and it's really dangerous. The risk is great. And after a couple of tensed hours, the doctor says, Alhamdulillah, it's a successful operation. He will make it, inshallah, and he is better. You prostrate to Allah. This is sunnah. But you do not prostrate to Allah every time they deposit your salary in your bank account every month, because this is reoccurring and it's not part of the sunnah. Lyric says, what is the ruling of raising one of the 7 bones or parts in prostration? Is the prayer valid? Because some say if you say the dhikr of prostration even once, even if you raise up one of these 7 parts, the prayer is valid. May Allah bless you, Shaykh, Ameen, and you as well, and all those viewing this. 7 organs I was commanded to prostrate over. The head, and the Prophet said, and pointed to his nose, meaning the forehead and the nose. The hands, the knees, and the feet. So your prostration is incomplete if you use 6. So I do this, but I lift my right hand. Or someone is playing with his beard, he goes Subhan Rabbil A'la, Subhan Rabbil A'la, and he doesn't put his left hand. He's playing. This prostration is invalid. But what about if I did the 7 organs on the floor, and I did Subhan Rabbil A'la, and then raised one foot to scratch the other with it, or I needed to turn off my mobile, so I raised my hand to my pocket and I turned off my mobile. Some scholars say that this prostration is invalid. And it seems, Wallahu A'lam, that what invalidates it, if you raise your head from the ground, but raising a knee or a foot or a hand, especially if there was a legitimate reason for that, and putting it back again, this does not affect your sujood, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Fida says, can you kindly make a brief explanation of the sentence التحيات لله والصلوات والطيبات? This is a form of greeting among the Arabs whenever they entered to a king or someone who's influential, they would say at-tahiyyat, at-tayyibat, as-salawat, not salawat, but they would greet and praise that person. And no one is more worthy of being praised than Allah Azza wa Jal. So we give all types of greetings. At-tahiyyat, as-salawat, all types of dua, supplications and prayers. At-tayyibat, all that is good in this world, we present it to our Lord Azza wa Jal when we are offering our prayers like that. Bansi, I am in the university now and really want to learn the deen. Where would you suggest I start, and if there is any online programs for me? Well, you come to the right place. Here is inshallah a trustworthy place to begin with. You have the Islamic fiqh Facebook, you have the Islamic fiqh website, you have usul products, which are a lot, and they're inshallah trustworthy and informative. You can also learn from Islam Q&A, which is the most trusted Islamic website in the world, visited by 100 million people a year. You can register in Knowledge International University, where I teach, where Sheikh Muhammad Salah teaches, and a great number of da'is and scholars, Sheikh Jamal Zarabuza and others, teach. And this is a beginning, and then you will find inshallah means and ways to continue. Sabir says, what if I forget to say Allahu Akbar in the middle of the salat in congregational salat? This is what we will discuss most likely next Monday. So Thursday we will continue the Adhan. Monday maybe we will go into talking about pillars, obligations, and Sunnah acts and words in Salah. But as a spoiler alert, saying Allahu Akbar in the middle of the Salat when moving from one pillar to the other is mandatory. If you missed it intentionally, your prayer is invalid. If you miss it unintentionally, you forgot it, you didn't know the ruling of it, and you came to know before you concluded your prayer, you have to prostrate twice for forgetfulness before salam. If you didn't, and you totally did not know the ruling, your prayer is valid, inshallah. Number 7, from Gul Freen. There are some Muslims I know who don't perform 5 times Salah. Please advise me how to invite them to worship Allah without offending them and remind them to be steadfast with their Salat. Well, Akhi, not wanting to offend people is a good thing. But sometimes people bring such offense to themselves. Not praying is a major sin. Skipping prayers is a major sin. Not praying at all, not even a single prayer, is an act of apostasy. So whether they're offended or not, it is your duty to remind them. Now, we don't tell people to go and be rude. Rather say to them, Akhi, come, let's pray. He said, later. Come on, man. You know that people who do not pray are not Muslims, and that it is a major sin. So don't let shaitan play with your mind, or don't allow your arrogance to be a barrier between you and paradise. Say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim and let's come and pray. If they insist on not praying, though you have provided them with text messages, reminders, voice notes, evidences from the Qur'an and Sunnah, and still they're defiant, such people are bad news. Cut them off. Boycott them. Who needs them? Focus on other people who would be more than happy to share with you your endeavor and your trip to Jannah. So they want you to remind them and they will remind you as well. Others, like those who do not pray, are bad news and you should disconnect yourself from them altogether. Ramla, at the time of Dajjal, when he will die, what happens to the people who followed him? People who committed kufr by following the Dajjal, would they have any chance to ask forgiveness from Allah after Dajjal, or their iman will be lost forever? Please guide. First of all, Ramla, the Prophet was the one who told us about all these incidents that will take place, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at the end of time. And he did not tell us anything about his followers. He just told us that Jesus will kill the Antichrist, the Dajjal. And soon afterwards, Gog and Magog will spread corruption and chaos on earth when they exit their confinement. And again, the Prophet did not tell us, alayhi sallam, about what will happen to the followers of Dajjal. So you should ask yourself, is this an important question to know? Why would Shaitan manage to engage us in questions that would not get us closer to Allah nor benefit us? People say, what kind of a planet did Ibrahim see in the beginning? He saw a planet, he said, this is my Lord. He saw the moon, he said, this is my Lord, it's bigger. He saw the sun, he said, this is my Lord, it is bigger. What was the planet Ibrahim saw in the beginning? Was it Venus, Mars, Jupiter? I don't know. Why do you ask? Allah didn't tell us. What type of a dog did the youth who were trapped in the cave for 300 plus years, what kind of a dog did they have? A German Shepherd, a Doberman, a Bulldog, Pit Bull, or maybe a Chihuahua? Allah didn't tell us. The Prophet didn't tell us. So why would we look into it? And so on. We can go on and on. So when you come to a question like this doesn't benefit you. And hence, it is best to ignore the whispers of Shaitan who's trying to distract you from learning what is beneficial. From the sequence of events, we can probably say that after the death of the Dajjal, all those who believed in him disbelieved. And all those who followed him will follow Isa, peace be upon him, and will become Muslims, and the whole world will turn into a Muslim community where there's blessings and favors of Allah upon them, as we were told, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. I am from Bangladesh. Is badminton halal for women if I play in my house with my husband or brother? Definitely it's halal. Badminton is a beautiful game, and as long as you're playing it with other women or with your mahrams, and there are no non-mahram watching, all types of sports are okay. You can play badminton, you can play squash, you can play tennis if you're a rich person, you can play table tennis, you can play anything that is entertaining and not exposing your aura, and it's not dangerous for you. How long is the waiting period for khul'? Is it 1 month or 3 months? It's neither. Khul' is a transaction between a wife and her husband, where she buys her freedom from him by giving him back his dowry, or a financial settlement that they agree, which is less than her dowry. Once he agrees, she has to wait until her monthly cycle is due, and the moment the monthly cycle is over and she's pure, she's free woman. She can go and marry whomever she wants. Isra says, reading about what is going on in the world, and sometimes reads celebrity news that come across the page, though it is considering waste, is it considered for the one who reads and went about their day without mentioning to anyone as backbiting, gossiping, or for reading the news articles, or is it only when a person talks about it? Reading it is part of the backbiting process, even if you do not contribute. For example, I'm sitting with a friend, and the friend is telling me, do you know that Abdullah did so and so, and he went and he gave and he said, and he's backbiting. I'm not doing anything, I'm just listening. Scholars say that listening by itself is participating in the backbiting process, so therefore you are, by reading it, participating in that. May Allah save us all. Fatima, is it permissible to handle and keep peacock feather in house if we do not have any belief in it? No problem. Afrina says, is it permissible to make debate by logic with parents if they say something against the ethics of Islam? It depends. If there is no disrespect and you're being diplomatic and dutiful and obedient, and they are accepting what you say, yes, arguing with them, debating with them in order to make them understand, there seems nothing wrong with that, inshallah. And finally, Afia says, I want to trust Allah completely. If I make a dua, and I should be certain that Allah will accept my dua, and if I think, what if it happens other ways, is this kind of thinking means that I don't trust Allah fully? And how is Muslim thinking should be if it actually happens the other way? This is a little bit complicated, the way you ask the question. Trusting Allah Azza wa Jal has nothing to do with answering your dua. The Prophet told us ﷺ that when we make dua, Allah will answer it through one of three ways. Either by, oh Allah, give me $1,000. Boom. A relative dies and I inherit $1,000. Or Allah would deflect harm that is equivalent to what I have asked. Oh Allah, grant me $1,000. While driving, subhanallah, I avoided an accident that was so imminent to happen. But Allah saved me, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it was predestined that it would have costed me $1,000. But Allah deflected it. 3, Allah will answer through storing what I've asked on the Day of Judgment. Allahumma grant me $1,000. Boom. Nothing happens. I trust Allah. I believe in Allah. So I'm happy. I keep on making dua. I'm happy. I'm trusting Allah. When I die, in Jannah, I will find so many things that I had not done. What is this? So many good deeds. This is your dua of $1,000. Allah made it into good deeds. So this is how you trust Allah. Not, okay, I'd like this. If it doesn't happen within a week, then I'm doubtful. And usually you don't answer my calls and might do astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. This is thinking negatively and in the worst form to Allah Azza wa Jal, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. And with this we conclude our session for today. Until we meet you in 3 days' time on Thursday, I leave you fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.